Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a pretty wild story about something called ghost vouchers. Basically, payments for things that seem to have just vanished. A really eye-opening audit report from Nigeria's Bauchi State has uncovered this huge financial mystery, and we're going to break it all down.
It really all boils down to this one absolutely massive number, 2.9 billion naira. That's about $2 million US. And according to a recent audit, that's how much government institutions in Bauchi State spent with almost no paper trail to back it up. We're talking payments made without any real proof of where the money went.
So you've got this huge sum of public money that has, for all intents and purposes, just disappeared from the books. And that leads to the big questions, right? Where did it actually go? And maybe more importantly, how in the world does something like this happen on such a massive scale? Let's take a closer look.
Okay, to really get a handle on how this happened, we've got to zoom in. The audit report actually takes us inside several key public institutions, and we're going to start with two of the state's major schools.
First on our list is the state's flagship public university, Saadu Zungur. Now, what auditors found here wasn't just a few isolated mistakes or some sloppy bookkeeping. No, it was a consistent pattern of financial irregularities that raises some huge red flags about how its money's being managed.
And wow, this slide really just shows you the scale of the mess. It's not one single problem. First off, you've got over 63 million naira paid out with zero supporting documents. Then another 48 million in payment vouchers just weren't shown to the auditors. On top of that, over 84 million in taxes were taken from staff paychecks but never actually sent to the government. And to cap it all off, a whopping 101 million naira was never even recorded in the cash book, making it almost impossible to trace.
You know, there's a real irony here that's just impossible to ignore. This university is named after a historical figure who was known for his incredible integrity. And yet, the very place that carries his name is now on the record for practices that seem to go against everything he stood for.
Okay, so that was the university. Now let's jump over to another key school, the Abubakar Tatari Ali Polytechnic, because you're going to see a very familiar story. Here we have over 21 million in revenue that was collected, but there's no proof it ever made it to the bank. Payments are being made without documents. Stuff is being bought but never recorded in the store ledgers, so who knows where it is. And then there's this, almost 33 million naira in payments that weren't even approved by the right people.
And look, this wasn't just a problem at a couple of schools. As the auditors kept digging, they quickly realized this was a systemic issue. The same kinds of financial failures were popping up again and again across all sorts of public organizations.
Yeah, and this table really drives the point home. I mean, just look at this. Take that first row, undocumented payments. You see a checkmark for the college, the hospital, the state transport company, and the game reserve. It's the same thing with unauthorized spending and failing to record items. It's a total breakdown of basic financial discipline, and it's happening everywhere. And you know, some of these gaps in the numbers are just staggering. For example, let's look at the state's transport company, Yankari Express. The audit found a gap of over 165 million naira between the revenue their own records say they collected and what actually got deposited in the bank. That is a ton of money that was officially collected but seems to have just vanished.
So, okay, the auditors found all this stuff, right? They documented it all in their report. The big question is, then what? What did these institutions have to say for themselves when all this was pointed out?
Well, the short answer, according to the audit report, not a whole lot. When these places did offer explanations, they almost never actually fixed the problem. The report is pretty clear about this. If vouchers were missing, they stayed missing. If revenue wasn't sent to the bank, no proof was ever produced to show it was. The problems were found, but they weren't resolved.
And what makes this whole situation even more jarring is that it's happening despite laws that are specifically designed to stop exactly this kind of thing from ever taking place.
I mean, just look at the contrast on this slide. It's night and day. On one hand, you have the Nigerian Constitution, which says flat out, you can't take money from state funds without authorization. You have anti-corruption laws that call these actions economic crimes. And on the other hand, you have the reality that the audit uncovered: spending without approval, taxes not being paid, and records being hidden from auditors. It's a complete disconnect between the rules and reality.
So that's where we're left. You've got this incredibly clear audit that lays out all the facts in detail. You've got laws that are right there in black and white spelling out how things are supposed to work. But when there's such a giant gap between the rules on the books and what's actually happening on the ground, you have to ask, will that gap ever be closed? What happens now?